Hello, welcome to this special Geeky Brummie mini-sode with myself and Mr. Matt Lovell. Hi, Matt.
Hello there.
How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. We're filming this on a Sunday,
Yes.
so quite chilled.
And that's the wrong franchise, by the way. Because today we're speaking all about Star Trek Section 31. So you and I got the privilege of a couple of weeks ago popping down to London for a press preview of Star Trek Section 31, the upcoming American science fiction TV film directed by Olatunde Onasami and starring the wonderful Michelle Yeoh, Sam Kazinksy, and loads of other amazing actors who I can't remember the name of, but I will do later on in the episode. Matt, you've not watched Star Trek for a while. Probably best to go with first impressions for you as a non Uber Trekkie on what you thought of the film.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for context, I'm a sort of casual Star Trek fan, and even though I've seen a lot of the old Star Trek, a lot of the newer Star Trek, I've not seen a lot of. So I was familiar-ish with the character um, that Michelle Yeoh plays, but I pretty much came into this cold. And my first impressions, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun, not too serious, uh, space romp. It was nice to see a different side of Star Trek that I personally hadn't really seen a lot of from talking to other people. A lot of Discovery and Picard kind of goes a bit more into this kind of tone, but
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed it for what it was. I would probably say the whole 90 minutes, it kept my attention. I was hooked. I enjoyed the characters. When the credits rolled, I was there going, I would happily watch more of this.
Mm-hmm. Because it's an original conception. It was supposed to be a series. I believe Shazad Latif was supposed to be in it, who'd been in the first couple of series of Discovery. There was that crossover point. We've seen Michelle Georgiou as both Captain Philippa Georgiou in Series 1 of Discovery, and then we saw the Mirror Universe counterpart come further out into that one. And this is the one that the character's based on. So it's Emperor Phillipa Georgiou, who was in, I think it was back end of Season 1, Season 2, and Season 3 of Discovery before they did the whole time jumpy bit. So it was nice to have her character return. And this is kind of filled in, I think they call it the forgotten decades between the original Star Trek series and Next Generation. So we get a few returning characters that you might not expect to pop up.
And how she played it was absolutely amazing. Like there's all of the fight scenes that she was doing, and I was just sat there going, like, this woman is in her 60s and she's still like, you know, throwing roundhouses like the best of them kind of thing. Without spoilers, that there's also some fights where it's very emotional. Like it's not just two people fighting each other. There's a lot more going on, and the way she's portrayed
Yeah.
that way she's sort of as her character, she's really
Mhm.
emoting through how they're fighting, that kind of thing. Really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's too many spoilers because I think it was in the trailer. We do get some bit of flashbacks back to her in the young Terran Empire and how she becomes to be Emperor, and it's a little bit of backstory filling in. That's really played quite well by Miku Martineau. I think she does a really good job interpreting like a young version of Emperor Georgia.
I would probably say it's a bit the Suicide Squad, James
Mhm.
Gunn version, and a bit Guardians of the Galaxy again,
Yeah,
James Gunn, but it's a sort of ragtag, you know,
Band of Merry
ragtag out
Misfits.
band of merry misfits, yeah,
Yeah.
kind of tale. But also, what I what I appreciated was going into this completely cold. I wasn't really left not knowing what was going on. I could tell that I was obviously missing bits and pieces here and there, little Easter eggs, little nods, that
Mhm.
kind of thing. But I could enjoy the story and not think, this is beyond me. I can't really watch this.
Yeah, I mean, let's go over some of the other cast. So we've got Amari Hardwick as Alok, kind of the center point of the team. He's the guy who gets the band together, and he's in charge of assembling this Section 31 specialist team together. Kind of got a lot of backstory himself. Got a bit of development in the film. There's really kind of bonding moment with him and Michelle Yeoh across multiple scenes. So we get some of his kind of backstory and why he turned into Section 31 as well. We then have Casey Roll, who plays Rachel Garrett, who's watched TNG. She is Captain Garrett, so she's the commander of the Enterprise C, but this is her much earlier in the career, and it's kind of a little bit, why is this kind of really straight-laced Federation officer being involved in Section 31? So that was quite nice to see. We get Sam Richardson as Quasi, who's this kind of chameleon that we get. So he gets to shapeshift. He can play anybody he wants. He's kind of the bit of the fun kind of character in the film. If you ever watch Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country, I think it's the same species, the chameleoid species that was in that. You get Sven Roygrok. I can never remember his name properly. As Fuzz. We won't talk about him too much because he's a massive spoiler later on in the film, but I think you'll enjoy his character. And then we get Rob Kazinksy, who we got to see in the Q&A, and he plays Zeph. So he's basically lives inside a mechanical exoskeleton. That's kind of his vibe. He's a mechanoid, I think he calls himself. But yeah, he treats the suit as his own, and he's one personality.
Yeah, and I think what I thought they did really well was every single character. They all have distinct personalities, and even though you do have that, as with any kind of like, we're assembling a crew type thing, you do get some like the exposition dumps and that kind of thing. But I thought every single character, they played off each other very, very well. They had really good camaraderie. I suppose one of the things I would say I would like to have seen more of is I wouldn't have minded an extra 10 or 15 minutes added onto the film just to kind of see more of that camaraderie, because every single scene that everyone was in, that it was just really fun.
Yeah, I think the problem was, you could tell this was very much a script for a full series that had been reworked down into a kind of 90-minute special movie.
Yeah.
Because you could feel like they'd kept a lot of the action beats, they'd kept a lot of the set pieces, they'd kept a lot of these are the big grandstanding events, but kind of cut the character side of it down a little bit. We do get some character development, but it's one or two characters rather than fleshing out a lot more of the other characters. It's kind of, as you said, exposition heavy at certain points. We have a scene quite early on in the ship where all the characters introduce themselves, and it's kind of, here I am, here are all my special skills, this is why I'm part of this team, blah, 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 next person. So I think that was kind of that cramming of all that plot from probably the first 4 or 5 episodes.
Especially characters like Quasi, I think, had just played it really well. Well, a couple of them where they're not always in the same form, that they played it very, very well. I'd probably say Robert Kazinksy as well. I was pleasantly surprised. So again, with Robert Kazinksy, I haven't seen Pacific Rim. I know I'm one of the only people who haven't, but I knew he was in EastEnders for a bit. And when I first saw him, I was a bit like, oh, he's going to be this kind of character. But then actually, as it went on, I really, really enjoyed his character. And that then when we had the Q&A, finding out, oh my God, he's actually this incredibly nerdy guy. Like, obviously a massive Star Trek fan, but also just in general, an incredibly nerdy guy who is just loving every minute of it and is deeply passionate about Star Trek, about the lore, about the character, about everything, making sure that it's something that's, for the fans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's quite interesting because I know him because he also was in Mass Effect Andromeda. He played the Archon. I know it's not the greatest Mass Effect game in many people's opinion, but his voice acting was really great in that, and it's nice to have somebody, as you said, who's such a sci-fi geek. And it's kind of great to have somebody like that on the set. I think possibly as well because he could probably say, right, this is the way I'd expect them Section 31 to do it. I mean, most of our Section 31 back history comes from DS9, which where the first appearance of Section 31 in TV release order. We see them a bit in we see them in Discovery. We see them in Star Trek Enterprise. So it's kind of been this always underlying thing, and we get them in the Abrams universe as well. And it's quite nice for his take on. Well, you can't have utopia without people working in the background and in the darkness to kind of make sure that it stays a utopia.
Mm.
And to me, it parallels the Obsidian Order. It parallels the Tal Shiar, these kind of secretive organizations we have. Every other race has one. So the Federation, of course, must have their own kind of agency in the background, doing lots of work and doing lots of spycraft and kind of doing the dirty jobs to make sure that these things don't happen. It's always going to, if somebody's going to have a spy agency, they always expect a counter agency. So I think that was nice to have that. Rolf Kazinski's personal highlight, he was great. Omari Hardwick, I think, played it. He was the straight man and he played it really well. Michelle Yeoh is just amazing in everything she touches. It was just like her screen presence is insane. As soon as she's on, it's kind of all focus becomes on her. And you got some really strong characters in this, but it was kind of every scene she was in, she just stole because it's Michelle Yeoh. Casey Roll I really liked as well as Garrett. I think she probably started off quite quiet in the film and as a back character, and then she gets more and more up to speed as it goes through. She got some great lines towards the end, which I'm not going to spoil, but I really would recommend it. Going back to the plot a bit, so we start off here. She's running a space station called the Baram, I believe, which is outside Federation space, and Section 31 turn up to recruit her. It's a MacGuffin hunt. It's a here's a thing that could possibly destroy the universe, which seems to happen far too much in Star Trek history. Is somebody creates something that could destroy the universe and just leaves it floating around, and somebody else picks it up. But I really enjoyed the kind of staging of that space station scene. It kind of gave us a good, kind of reasonable introduction to the characters. What did you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what I enjoyed as well, again, being a casual Star Trek fan, is just seeing a different side, like in just a scene where it just shows revelers doing their own thing. You get so much context about not just the Star Trek universe itself, but different races, how they're all interacting, how they all unwind, that kind of thing. And it was nice to see, for me anyway, there was a bit more of an underbelly side of Star Trek that I haven't seen a lot of previously. And then further on, just some of the comments characters make about the Federation. Again, it's nice to see a perspective outside of the Federation, as we're often viewing it from a Federation lens, if that makes sense. So
yeah, and I think that comes a lot into play. Is the previous series always see kind of the best and brightest in the Federation? It's always kind of here's the flagship, or here's so for stuff like DS9, here's some of the best crew that we've got. But Enterprise has always been like, here's the best. We're on the flagship, so here's the best crew possible. Lower Decks plays with that a lot. But I think there's some opportunity to play with that a little bit in here. Of these are kind of the washouts of Star Trek a little bit in Section 31. It's kind of people who wouldn't play nicely on something like the Enterprise. They've got their own unique style and talent, and they probably wouldn't work on a normal Federation ship.
Well, and also I think like the first, when it's first shown the space station, what I really appreciate, I got Fifth Element vibes. Like straight away, I got Fifth Element vibes, and it was just nice to see that kind of thing done in Star Trek.
Yeah, and I got really strong Mass Effect 2 vibes because there's a character in Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 called Aria, and she has her own space station outside of Alliance space, which is very similar kind of thing of. And the reverse rule of that is you don't fuck with Aria. That's the only rule about the space station. And you can see Georgiou is running this kind of similar. But it's great to, as you said, we get a callback to quite a few series, some that we haven't seen since TOS turn up, and you get that kind of melting pot interaction of it's grounded in the Star Trek universe because these are races that you know from Star Trek past without having to really line on it. And it's kind of, there's a couple of little Easter eggs and spoilers in that background of that scene, which is quite nice to see. Yeah, and then, as we said, we've got a bit of a MacGuffin hunt. It kind of light spoilers, it does involve the mirror universe, and it really recalls back to Phillipa Georgiou's past and how she's operated previously, and it's a kind of her turn of character to a certain extent, I suppose. It's kind of a melding of that kind of Emperor Georgiou versus Phillipa Georgiou versus this next stage in her career of what you're trying to do. Are you trying to balance your ledger, or are you trying to become a force for good in the universe, but in your own special way? And I think that's kind of how they explore it, of how does she fit in now? How does she keep herself centered, and how does she keep herself as part of the universe in a kind of, this is a sensible thing. Do you think we could see a Section 31 series? I would love to see a Section 1 kind of prequel, to be fair.
I would honestly love to see it. Could we see one? I think potentially. They're obviously throwing this out there, seeing how it goes. I think if the reaction is good, then they could potentially spin it out into something else, whether it's another movie or a series, that kind of thing. I would personally love to see more of it. It's nice to have a kind of similar to um other series like this, i.e. stuff that Disney's doing with Star Wars. I think the stuff that I find most interesting is the stuff that's outside of the main,
Yeah.
the main
The whole Jedi
plot points, timelines, that kind of thing. Yeah. And so with this, what again, as I said, what I really enjoyed was that it's not really talking or looking at anything within the main series. It's something that's completely off its own, doing its own thing, kind of similar to something like Andor, that kind of thing, Skeleton Crew. So I think this this could be really, really good if they carried it on. I would love to see more of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's I would call it it's pretty much just a fun romp. It's 90 minutes of a bit of some fun in the Star Trek universe without kind of breaking the rules and the lore of Star Trek. It's kind of done with respect, and I think the director Olatunde Osunsami. So I think the way that Olatunde Osunsami has kept it kind of with respect. And that's the other thing, is even the best people in Star Trek that we've seen, like Picard, Kirk, Cisco, Janeway, they always bend the rules anyway, and they're always breading around the prime directive, and it's kind of, they'll do anything they can within reason to get the job done. And this is kind of very similar way done. It's not going too far outside that. It's not going outside of what you'd expect a Star Trek series to be. I want to give a special shout out to the score by Jeff Russo as well. It's a really nice score that kind of fits in Star Trek without actually being nailed down to that whole kind of fanfare that we see in that one. It's kind of playful. I really enjoyed it. If you like Star Trek, if you like modern Star Trek, even if you like older Star Trek, I think it's still worth your time for 90 minutes.
100%, and it's just that it's 90 minutes, so like it's yeah, as you said, it's a bit of fun. Yeah, I think, as I said to you before, within those 90 minutes, there wasn't a moment where I was checking my watch or bored or anything like that. It was
yeah,
you're on the journey, and for 90 minutes, it helps you sort of get completely absorbed in it.
And I'd probably say that's my slight complaint with it, is it is very much a rush journey. It's very fast. It's very kind of beat, 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 beat. It's kind of, I could see if this was a series, there'd be breathing space that would allow for it. But it's quite heavy on the action, which you expect, because it's basically like Mission Impossible, but with Star Trek to a certain extent. So you've got all your agents in there. It's a very kind of Mission Impossible vibe to the film, a very kind of similar beats of, you'll get a staging bit, then a bit of a break, then a big fight scene happens, and a bit of a break, etc., etc. But I could have probably done a little bit better on the pacing personally. I mean, it's great, and it's a fun ride, but I was pretty exhausted by the end of it. I don't know how you felt. It was kind of like, oh, that was actually like kind of a bit of a ride.
Yeah, absolutely, and like I said, I think just it would have been really good to have a bit more screen time with each of the characters to really show the personality. And exactly that, it was my biggest criticism of it is actually I thought it was just a bit too short. And some of the story beats, I think they all landed, but they could have landed. They could have been more impactful if we had just a little bit longer with the whole situation.
Yeah, that wraps up the film nicely. But we was also well treated to a little bit of fun with Michelle Yeoh and Rob Kazinksy, who did a bit of Q&A after the screening. Did you enjoy that?
I loved it, and I think what I really enjoyed was both of them, particularly Michelle Yeoh, who I've loved ever since I first saw her in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, like in the early 2000s. There's always a bit of me that's a bit scared about, don't meet people you admire. And actually, Rob Kazinski said the same thing in the Q&A about his reservations, doing Star Trek and meeting all these wonderful people, but incredibly humble, but also incredibly passionate. Like, as soon as either of them were asked questions about Star Trek and the characters, you could tell they were passionate about it. They're not just there for a paycheck. Michelle Yeoh, especially, she's not just didn't just do Star Trek because they wrote her a big check. She actually loves what it is.
Well, since she's came back originally in Star Trek Discovery, I think it was 2014, 2015, the first year Discovery dropped. So it's been a long old time since she started in Discovery. Since then, she's gone on to win her Oscar. She's been in Everything Everywhere All at Once. She's in Wicked at the moment. So she's in some of this biggest franchises known to man. So to come back and revisit a character from a decade ago, which you still kind of love, and this has had a bit of production hell with COVID and everything else, but it shows that she really likes that character and she really wants to re-inhibit that character, and that's kind of the vibe that she got. And she got asked directly, it's like, would you come back if we did more Section 31? And she was like, I'd happily revisit the character of Emperor Georgiou whenever.
Again, talk about the camaraderie, like both of them on stage together, and especially when Rob was asked a question about Star Trek, and he went off on like a TED Talk tangent about Star Trek, and she even rolled her eyes and went, "Oh my god, he's going to start one," kind of thing. It's that you could tell they really enjoyed working together and with the rest of the cast, and also they were all just very grateful they could do it. So it was really lovely to see.
Yeah, because I think Ollerton, they said Ollerton Day Arson Sami was very much a case of we're a family on this set, and it's kind of it was a really really close knit set, and I think they said they pretty much made friends straight away, and you could tell that kind of vibe of one of the things I learned, which was really good, which was part of it scripted, of course, part of it scripted, but they were allowed the opportunity to play with lines and rework stuff. And Rob Kazinski said some of the lines that he came out with that stayed in the cut, and it was given that freedom to kind of play with their characters a little bit, kind of think about how their character develops, how the character fits into the Star Trek universe, and be a bit more playful with it. And I think his character is a perfect example like that. I'd love more screen time with him. I think he didn't get enough in there. That's the only problem you get with an ensemble cast movie is you don't get that kind of time to develop and grow every single character on screen. You got some development and some character growth, but not, When you're going from something which has got a series which is multiple runs, like Star Trek usually is a 26, 27 episode series, multiple series, you get to spend a lot of time with the characters. I said this was kind of my slight annoyance with it is you don't get enough time. It's 90 minutes is kind of too short to be having these quite well written characters on screen and short. And I think you could kind of feel that with the cast as well, as they would love to get really back in and really kind of deep dive and dig back into those characters if they had the choice. To me, it's kind of, if you like Star Trek, give it a watch. If you like sci-fi, give it a watch. If you like that kind of James Gunny kind of feel to a film, it feels like this is kind of a Star Trek almost riff on a James Gunn kind of movie, but I think it's done with real nice respect for the rest of Star Trek without having to be kind of maudlin and too over the top of the morality and everything. It's just fun. Just go and watch it. It's fun. It's not going to be world changing, but I think it's a great cast. It's a good plot. It's a good storyline, and you get some great acting alongside it. So Section 31 is arriving exclusively on Paramount Plus here in the UK on January the 24th, 2025. It's going to be a one-shot event, so it's going to be straight on, and then you get to enjoy the whole thing in one sitting. So recommended, good fun, good bit of a J. Really take your time out and give it a watch. You don't really need to watch all of Discovery, I think, to enjoy this film. It helps with the experience and it helps know the character development of Emperor Georgiou, but you don't need to have that to be part of the watch experience, I'd say.
So how many Geeky Brummies out of 5 would you give it?
Well, we never give a score on Geeky Brummie, but I would say it's in my definite watch list. Not, and I would recommend as well. I think, as I said, if you're open to a new Star Trek experience, I would say this is really worth your time and give it a watch.
Agreed. And we want to hear what you guys think as well. So
Yeah.
drop us a message after you've seen it and let us know whether you agree with our review or whether you don't.
Yeah, drop us a comment, message, like, subscribe, do all the usual stuff while you're here. Don't forget to pop to geekybrummie.com where we get loads of other content around comics, games, movies, etc. And we shall see you again soon for our next episode. I think it's mid-February we're due back. But for now, live long and prosper.
I can't do it. There you go.